Welcome back to the channel. We're back with our Final Fantasy Commander deck profile. Today with Jiraha Tia. He's a 3/5 for 5 mana with reach, and whenever one or more other creatures or artifacts you control die, draw a card. This only happens once each turn, so we're going to want to make sure it happens during not only our turn, but our opponent's turn as well, by having plenty of things that will be able to be sacrificed during our opponent's turn or during our turn, and ways to sacrifice them. Our main focus of this deck, though, we did make plenty of cards in here that are food tokens, because it counts artifacts as well. This way, we could sacrifice those artifacts during our opponent's turn, not only gaining the life, but also getting that little bit of draw power off of it. But yeah, that's the general overview of the deck. Let's get into it card by card, but first I'd just like to ask that you like, comment, subscribe so you can stay tuned for future videos. Let's get into it. As we do with most decks, we start off with an Arcane Signet for that little bit of mana that we need there. Candy Trail for 1 mana. We get a food clue token that we could use to scry 2 when it comes onto the battlefield. And then whenever we want, we can pay 2 mana to sacrifice it, gain 3 life, draw a card. We won't just be drawing 1 card though. We'll get to draw 2 off of Jiraha's ability. Field Tested Frying Pan. Whenever this card enters the battlefield, you get a 1/1 halfling creature token and attach this card to it. The creature also has, whenever you gain life, this creature gets +X to end turn, where X is the amount of life you gain this turn. So anytime we sacrifice our foods, that creature gets an additional 3, +3/+3. And we'll get to draw a card because we have Jiraha on the battlefield and we sacrifice the token. Idol of Oblivion, draw a card, activate only if you created a token this turn. We'll be creating plenty of food tokens, so let's draw plenty of cards off of it. You also pay 8 mana, sacrifice it for 10/10 Eldrazi, but we tend not to do that. Instant Ramen, it's a food itself. It also has flash. Whenever this artifact enters, draw a card. A little bit of draw power there. Then we can also sacrifice it, gain 3 life, and draw a card when we use Jiraha's ability with it. The fun part about sacrificing tokens is also that we get to during our opponent's turn. We don't necessarily have to wait till our turn, so we do it every turn. Karak, Clan Ironworks, sacrifice an artifact, add 2 mana. We don't necessarily have to spend the 2 mana to sacrifice them. We could just sacrifice them and get 2 mana instead. We're almost doing it in reverse. Lemba's artifact food, when it enters battlefield, scry 1, draw a card. Sacrifice its gain 3 life, and draw that card as well off of Jiraha's ability. And whenever this card's put into the graveyard from the battlefield, shuffle into the deck so you can make sure you get it again and again, getting that plenty of more draw power off of it if you need it. Lightning Grease, I don't know if necessarily Jiraha people want to remove it that often just because it's not that powerful of a commander, especially the way we're running it, but you know, a little bit of protection of it would definitely help out a whole bunch. Marble Diamond for some additional mana there. Same thing with Mind Stone. Scrolling down. Nuka-Cola Vending Machine. For 1 mana, we get a food token, which we could then use for that sacrificing and using for Jiraha's ability. But also when we sacrifice the food, create a tap treasure token, allowing us to get plenty of more mana so that we could cast our other spells that could help us do other things and have actual ways to win the game rather than just gaining 3 life every turn and drawing a card. Catcher's Monument. White creature spells cause 1 less to cast. Whenever you cast a creature spell, create a 1/1 white warrior creature token. They also give us something to block with. We do have a couple ways to create tokens in here. So let's get those additional tokens in order to have a creature that we wouldn't mind blocking for us. Pearl Medallion. A little bit of cost reduction there in order to, you know, be able to cast more stuff. Soul Ring for that additional mana. Staff of Completion. Untap this artifact for 5 mana, pay 4 life to draw a card, pay 3 life to proliferate, pay 2 life, add 1 mana of any color, or pay 1 life to destroy target permanent you control. So we could pay that 1 life, destroy target permanent we control, to get that draw power off of Jiraha's ability, or we could use one of its other abilities depending on what we need at the time. Swiftfoot Boots, another way to protect Jiraha there. Underworld Cookbook, discard a card, create a food token, having another food token there to sacrifice in order to have that additional draw power there. You can also sacrifice this card, return target creature from your graveyard to your hand, allowing you to get the cards that got removed back to your hand as well, or maybe we discarded something that we needed in hopes of drawing something better with Jiraha's ability, but nope, we get it back anyway. Thought Vessel, no maximum hand size since we're potentially drawing 4 cards every round. We're going to have plenty of cards in our hand to cast. Not much we could do with them potentially, but let's see what we could do. Drone of the Eldraine enters the battlefield, choose a color, aka mono white for this deck, add 4 mana to the chosen color, spend this only cast mono colored spells of that color. Or we could pay 3 mana to draw 2 cards. Spend only mana of the chosen color to activate this ability, which won't be a problem in this deck. Drone of Geth, sacrifice an artifact, proliferate, allowing us to sacrifice our foods without necessarily having to use mana for that. Same thing with Witch's Oven, allowing us to sacrifice our creatures in order to get food tokens, allowing us that fun little sacrifice outlet there to get Jaraha's ability off. Academy Manufacturer, if you create a clue, food, or treasure, create one of each instead, allowing us, even more off of Jaraha's ability there. Apothecary, and that also allows even more things to sacrifice there for Jaraha's ability. Apothecary White, Vigilance, whenever you attack, you create a food token for each player being attacked, allowing us plenty of food. We don't tend to attack too much with this deck, but, we need some way to win. White mana, tap X, untap foods you control, create X 1/1 white human creature tokens, allowing us to have those creatures to block with there. Which we also don't mind getting removed because, we party. Arcbound Ravager, another way to sacrifice our foods without having to sacrifice the foods with the mana. Put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. It also has modular, but it's mostly the sacrifice outlet that we're looking for on this one. Astrid Path, whenever this card enters the battlefield or attacks, create a food token. Plenty of ways to create food tokens. Whenever you sacrifice a clue or food, this creature explores, allowing us to either get land into our hand or a +1/+1 counter on it, and our opponent gets to see the top card of our deck. Or we put it into a graveyard. We surveil it, really. Benny Brack Zoologist. At the beginning of each end step, if you created a token this turn, draw a card. We're going to be creating a food token during most turns. And that's during each opponent's turn, not just during our turn, allowing us plenty of draw power there. We could potentially deck ourselves out with this deck, I'm realizing. Build a Pony. When Build a Pony enters the battlefield, create 2 food tokens, having those there to sacrifice. Or you can just sacrifice those food tokens with his ability. Until end of turn, target creature you control assigns combat damage equal to its toughness, rather than its power. Having that ability to sacrifice the food token is really helpful, allowing us to, have him deal that 5 damage rather than just 3. Or, just a way to get a little bit of draw power off that. Enduring Innocence, a little bit of draw power anytime a creature with power 2 or less enters. That's most of our creatures. So, helps out a little bit there with that little bit of draw power. Gingerbrute, Haste. Gingerbrute can't be blocked up by creatures with haste, but his other ability that we care about is that you can sacrifice him for 2 mana to gain 3 life, which will also allow us to draw a card off Jaraha's ability. Knight of the White Orchid. Search our deck for our planes. I like to see it. Loyal Warhound, same thing. Mondrak Loridamus, why create 1 food token when we could create 2 food tokens? And also good sacrifice outlets, because we could sacrifice 2 of those foods in order to make it indestructible and get that little bit of draw power off Jaraha's ability. Mother of Runes, target creature control gains protection. There's that little bit of protection there on Jaraha. Like I said, we want to make sure we keep him around so he can keep drawing cards, so let's have ways to make sure he can't get removed. Rosy Cotton of South Lane. Whenever this creature enters the battlefield, create a food token. We have plenty of food token creations. And whenever you create a token, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control other than Rosie. So you can put it on Jaraha. Do what we can. Selfless Spirit. Sacrifice this creature. Creatures you control gain indestructible end of turn. Easy way to have a creature that can be sacrificed. Also, indestructible helps out a whole bunch, especially in terms of protecting Jaraha. Sierra, Nuka's biggest fan. Nuka Cola Challenge. Whenever 1 or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, put a quest counter on her and create a food token. We're not going to be dealing combat damage that much, but the fact that we could create a food token helps us out a whole bunch there. And whenever you sacrifice a food, target creature you control gets +X/+X to end a turn, where X is the number of quest counters on Sierra, allowing us, a way to swing in with stuff without, just a way to swing in with stuff, really. Skrell, Defector Might. It's a legendary artifact creature that can't block, but you choose make it so one of your other creatures could deal a little bit of damage while you're at it, and a little bit of toxic if we need it. Solemn Simulacrum, a little bit of extra mana there. Sun Pearl Kieran. Whenever this creature enters, return up to one other target non-land permanent you control to its owner's hand, allowing us to get some fun enter the battlefield abilities with some of these creatures that it does help us out with, because we do have quite a few in this deck. Surge Injured Meal Ender. Whenever another artifact you control is put into a graveyard, put a +1/+1 counter on the Surge Injure, allowing us to get Surge Injure quite strong with all those food tokens that we're sacrificing. Or you sacrifice her herself in order to gain quite a bit of life and draw a card if you have draw on the battlefield. And Voice of Victory. Opponents can't cast spells during your turn, but the part we actually care about more in this deck is to mobilize. This way, when those tokens that we're attacking get removed, we could get the draw power off them. Only the one draw power, that was the only thing, because it only happens once each turn. Next, we have Anointed Procession. If in fact we create one or more tokens, create two. Why wait around for two food tokens when we get two for the price of one? For 3 mana, we get Caretaker's Talent. Whenever one or more tokens you control enter, draw a card. We're going to be creating plenty of food tokens. Let's get more draw when they enter, not just when they get sacrificed. And you could even get a copy of a token you control. And you guess you get a little bit of +2/+2 on creature tokens you control. You're not going to really use that one too much, though. Darksteel Mutation. It's a good way to get rid of our opponent's commander without actually getting rid of their commander. Food Coma. Whenever Food Coma enters, and also the thing is, if they have a way to sacrifice it, this also goes to the graveyard. Only thing is, Withdraw has ability that he only cares about creatures or artifacts dying, so that won't really benefit us there, but it would go to the graveyard if we had a way to make that into an artifact in this deck. Food Coma enters the battlefield, exile a target creature an opponent controls until this card leaves the battlefield. Create a food token. Creating a food token is fun in this deck. Land tax, initial way to get some lands into our hand, especially because we're running mono white. We don't necessarily have that many. But, I mean, we're going to be drawing cards, so we might have that already in the hand. So, as always, I always like to say, play what fits your budget. Of Herbs of Stewed Rabbit, probably our favorite card in this deck. Put a +1/+1 counter on up to one target creature, create a food token. Doesn't matter who we put it on, but we get a food token, draw a card, create a food token. And then its final ability, create a 1/1 white halfling token for each food you control. With all these foods we've been making, that'll be a lot of halflings potentially. Dawn's Truce, and also, they get removed when they block. Who cares? We get to draw cards off them. Dawn's Truce for some protection. Disenchant for some removal there. Dispatch for some removal there. Everybody Lives for some protection for that hexproof and indestructible. Players gain hexproof until end of turn as well. Players can't lose life this turn, and players can't lose the game or win the game this turn. So it's a little bit of protection for everyone there. Generous Gift for that removal. Hobbit Sing deals X damage to target creature, where X is the number of creatures you control, plus the number of foods you control. You don't need to worry about how many creatures we control. We just need to worry about how many foods we control. We're going to be drawing tomatoes at them. Path to Exile for that removal, Stroke of Midnight for more removal, Swords to Plowshare for even more removal. Of course, we run Plains on the stack, Rogue's Passage to have a way to swing in with stuff without it being guarded, and War Room, pay life equal to the number of colors in your commander's color identity, draw a card, aka pay 3 mana and a life, draw a card, depending on what we need at the time. Elspeth Stormslayer, double the number of creatures you control anytime you create. No more tokens you control. This way we double up the amount of food that we're getting again. Also, the other abilities, getting a creature +1/+1 counters and flying, some more tokens that could block in order to have stuff that get removed during your opponent's turn. Elspeth Sun's Champion, once again, some tokens that'll get serve as blockers during our opponent's turn. Destroy all creatures with power 4 or greater. Draw only has 3 power, and most of our stuff will be less than 4 power, so that's a good board wipe there. And you get an emblem with creatures you control, get +2/+2 and have flying. We're probably not going to get to that ability, but we could. Farewell for a board wipe. Feldamani, destroy all creatures with power greater than target creature's power. So, maybe we may draw out that target, moving all of our opponent's stuff, leaving all our stuff on the battlefield. Late to Dinner, return target creature from your graveyard to the battlefield, create a food token. Another way to create a food, another way to benefit off of a creature getting sent to the graveyard. Ravening at War, exile all multicolored permanents, aka not our stuff, but potentially our opponent's stuff. And then finally, Battle of Bywater, destroy all creatures with power 3 or greater, create a food for each creature we control. most of our stuff will stay because, once again, it doesn't have power greater than 3. Drawhot would get removed, so hopefully you'll have the mana to cast them again. But that's the deck there. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure to leave your deck profile down there in the comment section. I hope you enjoyed and have a good day.